The room was white, not the clean white of fresh snow or Sunday church linens, but the sterile, suffocating white of a place where memories went to die. In that colorless void, a woman sat motionless on a metal chair, her hands folded in her lap, with the careful precision of someone who had forgotten how to move naturally. Her eyes stared at nothing. Her face held no expression. She might have been a photograph, might have been a ghost, might have been anything except what she had once been. The sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway beyond her door. Heavy boots, a man's tread, then voices low and urgent. "The serum is holding." The first voice belonged to someone accustomed to being obeyed. 87% memory suppression, came the reply. Clinical, detached. The voice of a man who had long ago stopped seeing his patients as human beings. The remaining fragments are inconsequential. A name, Jacob, some vague sense of a place called Bitter Creek. Nothing that could compromise our operation. And if she remembers more, a pause. Then, with the casual indifference of someone discussing livestock, then we administer another dose, or we dispose of her entirely. Either way, the problem resolves itself. The footsteps retreated, the voices faded, and in that white room the woman who had once been Eliza Mercer sat in her chair and stared at nothing. A single tear traced down her cheek, though she didn't seem to notice. Her lips moved, forming a word without sound. Jacob. The scene dissolved into darkness. 3 months earlier. Chicago. October rain hammering against the windows of an office that had seen better days. Charlotte Hayes sat at a desk buried under case files, her eyes fixed on a photograph that had haunted her for the better part of a year. The woman in the picture looked young, hopeful, alive. Below the image, stamped in red ink that seemed to bleed across the page, were 3 words that felt like an indictment. Case closed. Victim deceased. Lottie closed the file with hands that had stopped trembling months ago. She had learned to lock her emotions away, to view each failure as data rather than tragedy. It was the only way to survive in this business, the only way to keep breathing when the ghosts started crowding too close. But Mary Aldrich wouldn't stay buried. The case had been straightforward on paper. Missing woman, age 23, last seen boarding a train west in response to a matrimonial advertisement. Family hadn't heard from her in 6 weeks. The Pinkerton agency had been hired to investigate. Lottie had been assigned to the case because she was good at finding people who didn't want to be found. She had found Mary, but not in time. The girl had been in a boarding house in St. Louis alive, but broken in ways that no doctor could fix. She had answered a letter from a man calling himself William Sterling. Romantic words, promises of a ranch in Montana, and a future built on partnership. Mary had traveled halfway across the country with her life savings sewn into the lining of her traveling case. She had never met William Sterling. The man who met her at the station had taken her money, her dignity, and nearly her life before she managed to escape. Lottie had found her 3 days later, had held her while she cried, had promised that the man who hurt her would face justice, had meant every word. 2 weeks later, Mary Aldrich walked into Lake Michigan and didn't come back. The official report called it an accidental drowning. Lottie knew better. She had seen the look in Mary's eyes during their last conversation, the hollowness, the shame that no amount of reassurance could touch. Mary hadn't drowned by accident. She had chosen the water over a world that had taught her she was worthless. And William Sterling, the man who had driven her to that choice, had vanished like smoke. No trace, no leads, just another name in a long list of aliases used by men who preyed on women desperate enough to believe in hope. Until 3 weeks ago. Lottie opened another file. This one bore a different name, Grant Hollis. But the pattern was identical. Matrimonial advertisements in Eastern newspapers, elaborate correspondence, women who traveled west and disappeared, some turned up dead. Others simply vanished, swallowed by the vast emptiness of the frontier. And always at the center of it a man who changed names as easily as he changed shirts. But this file contained something the others didn't, a connection. One of the victims, a woman named Eliza Mercer from California, had managed to send a letter to her brother before she disappeared. In that letter she had mentioned details, names, locations, a network that extended far beyond one man's greed. Eliza had been investigating, gathering evidence, getting close to something big. Then silence. The official story said Eliza Mercer had committed suicide, overcome with shame after being swindled. Lottie had read the report, had seen the gaps in the narrative, had recognized the same hollow explanation that had been used to close Mary's case. Convenient, clean, wrong. Eliza Mercer hadn't killed herself. Lottie was certain of it. Someone had silenced her because she knew too much. And that same someone was still out there, still operating, still destroying lives. Lottie had taken the case without authorization, had told her supervisor she was following up on a minor lead. In truth, she was chasing ghosts. Mary's ghost, Eliza's ghost, all the nameless women who had trusted the wrong man and paid for it with everything they had. She had spent 2 months tracking the pattern, following the money, connecting the dots that law enforcement had been too lazy or too corrupt to connect. And finally she had found him, Grant Hollis, currently operating out of Montana Territory under the name Edward Ashford. Same methods, same promises, different name. Lottie had made her decision that same evening. She would go to Montana. She would pose as one of Hollis's victims. She would get close to him, gather evidence, and expose the entire operation. And this time, she wouldn't fail. She had written her resignation letter that night, but hadn't submitted it. Part of her still hoped the agency would support her investigation. The larger part knew better. This was personal now, and personal cases had no place in professional detective work. So Charlotte Hayes had become Clara Winslow, schoolteacher from Boston. Lonely spinster, desperate for a fresh start. She had crafted the persona carefully, writing letters to Grant Hollis in response to his advertisement. Had played the role perfectly, eager but not desperate, educated but not worldly. Exactly the kind of woman a man like Hollis would target. His replies had been everything she expected. Elegant handwriting, romantic prose, promises that sounded too good to be true because they were. But Lottie had played along, had let him believe she was falling for his lies, all while documenting everything for the case she would build against him. The plan was simple. Travel to Montana, meet Hollis at the appointed location, gather evidence of his criminal activity, then turn everything over to the federal marshals and watch him hang. What Lottie hadn't counted on was Jacob Mercer. The train to Montana had taken 4 days. Lottie had used the time to refine her cover story to memorize every detail of Clara Winslow's fictional life. She had also hidden a small derringer in the false bottom of her traveling case along with coded notes about the investigation. If things went wrong, she wanted to leave a trail someone could follow. The stagecoach from Cheyenne to Bitter Creek Station was another 2 days of bone-rattling misery. Lottie endured it with the stoic patience of someone who had survived worse. The other passengers were a mix of prospectors, gamblers, and women whose profession was written in their rouge and their eyes. None of them spoke to the prim schoolteacher in the corner. None of them noticed when she palmed a small notebook and made notes about landmarks and potential escape routes. Bitter Creek Station appeared on the horizon just before sunset on October 15th, a weathered building hunched against the vast Montana landscape like it was trying to disappear. A few scattered structures, a corral, a well that creaked in the wind. Nothing about it suggested safety or civilization. It looked exactly like the kind of place where a woman could vanish and no one would think to ask questions. Lottie stepped off the stage with her traveling case and her carefully constructed expression of hopeful anticipation. The station keeper, a barrel-chested man with suspicious eyes, watched her approach. "Miss Winslow." His voice held the flat tone of someone who had seen this scene play out before and knew how it ended. "Yes, I'm here to meet my fiancé, Mr. Edward Ashford. Has he arrived yet?" The station keeper spat tobacco juice into the dirt. "No, ma'am. No one by that name come through here." Lottie let her face fall, let worry creep into her eyes. "But he said he would be here, October 15th. He was very specific." "Lots of men are specific in their letters, miss. Don't mean they show up." The other passengers were already dispersing. The stage would continue north in the morning. For now, Lottie was alone at a desolate way station with nowhere to go and no one coming for her. Exactly as she had planned. She had chosen this role carefully. A stranded woman would draw attention, would create opportunities for conversation, would make people underestimate her, and most importantly, it would force Grant Hollis to make contact if he was in the area. Men like him couldn't resist a vulnerable woman. What Lottie hadn't planned for was the rider who appeared on the horizon just as the sun touched the mountains. He came from the west, moving at an easy canter that spoke of someone who knew the land and wasn't in any hurry. The horse was a chestnut gelding with a white blaze, well-muscled, accustomed to long distances. The man in the saddle sat with the relaxed confidence of someone who had spent more of his life on horseback than off it. Lottie watched him approach with the careful attention of someone trained to catalog potential threats. Broad shoulders beneath a weathered coat, hat pulled low against the wind, the glint of a rifle in a scabbard alongside the saddle. Perhaps 32, with a face that looked like it had been carved by the same harsh elements that shaped the mountains behind him. The rider reined in at the hitching post and dismounted in a single fluid motion. His boots hit the ground with the certainty of a man who knew exactly where he stood. When he looked up, Lottie found herself meeting eyes the color of winter ice, gray and sharp and missing nothing. "Ezra." His voice was low, carrying an edge of authority that made the station keeper straighten slightly. "Got any coffee?" "Always got coffee for paying customers, Cole." "You coming from town? Been riding 3 days." The man who had been called Cole looped his horse's reins around the hitching post and stepped onto the porch. His gaze passed over Lottie with the brief assessment of someone cataloging potential threats, then moved on. "Got business up north. Stage won't be through until tomorrow." "Don't need the stage." Cole pulled off his gloves and tucked them into his belt. "Just need coffee and feed for the horse." They moved past Lottie as if she were part of the furniture. Another fixture of the station no more noteworthy than the bench she would soon pretend to occupy. She watched them disappear inside, heard the murmur of their voices, and felt something cold settle in her chest. This was the part she had prepared for, the waiting, the performance of desperation. She would sit on that bench for days if necessary, would let the station keeper see her growing more desperate, would create a story that would spread through the territory. The abandoned bride at Bitter Creek. Everyone would remember her, and when Grant Hollis eventually made contact, she would have witnesses. Lottie settled onto the bench with her traveling case at her feet. The wind was picking up, carrying the first sharp promise of winter. She pulled her shawl tighter and stared at the horizon, playing the role of a woman watching for someone who would never come. Except in her case, she wasn't watching for Grant Hollis. She was watching for any sign of the network he worked for, any hint of the larger operation that had swallowed Eliza Mercer and Mary Aldrich and God knew how many others. Inside the station, Cole Mercer wrapped his hands around a tin cup of bitter coffee and let the warmth seep into his bones. He had been riding hard for 3 days, following a trail that had grown cold twice before he picked it up again, and his body ached in ways that reminded him he wasn't 22 anymore. "That woman out there," he kept his voice low, though he suspected she couldn't hear through the thick walls. "How long has she been sitting on that bench?" "Just got off the stage." Ezra settled into a chair across the rough-hewn table, his own cup cradled in weathered hands. "Says she's meeting her fiancé, Edward Ashford. He never showed." Cole's cup went very still. "Edward Ashford. You know him?" "No." Cole set down his coffee with careful precision. "But I know the type." "What's her name?" "Clara Winslow. From Boston, if I had to guess. Got that educated look. Proper." Ezra's lip curled slightly, stupid enough to travel halfway across the country for a man she never met face to face. Cole stood and moved to the window. The woman on the bench sat with perfect posture, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the middle distance. She looked exactly like what Ezra had described, a schoolteacher, respectable, naive, except for one thing. Cole had spent 3 years hunting men who lived on lies. He had learned to read people the way other men read books. And something about the woman on that bench didn't add up. Her posture was too controlled, her stillness too deliberate. She held herself like someone playing a role rather than someone lost in genuine distress. "I need to speak with her." Cole turned away from the window. Why you looking to rescue another one? Ezra's voice held a note of warning. Cole, you can't save every woman who gets swindled by a smooth talker. I'm not trying to save her. Cole headed for the door. I'm trying to figure out if she's who she says she is. He found her exactly where he had left her, sitting on the bench, staring at nothing. She didn't turn when he approached, didn't acknowledge his presence until he spoke. Miss Winslow. She looked up. Her eyes were brown, he noticed, dark enough to hide secrets. She studied him for a moment before responding. Yes, name's Cole Mercer. I own a ranch about 40 miles north of here, the Bar M. He paused, choosing his words carefully. Ezra says you're waiting for a man named Edward Ashford. My fiancé. Her voice was steady, too steady for a woman who had just been abandoned. He was supposed to meet me here. Perhaps he was delayed. Perhaps. Cole settled onto the bench beside her, keeping a respectful distance. Or perhaps he was never planning to come at all. She stiffened, almost imperceptibly. I don't know what you mean. Edward Ashford is an alias. The man you've been corresponding with is a criminal who targets women through matrimonial advertisements. He convinces them to bring their savings west, then robs them and disappears. You're not the first woman I've seen sitting on this bench waiting for a man who's never coming. Lottie kept her expression carefully neutral. Surprise, confusion. The appropriate emotions for someone receiving devastating news. But inside her mind was racing. How did this rancher know about Hollis's operation? Why was he telling her this? What was his angle? I don't believe you, she said, putting just the right amount of tremor in her voice. Edward's letters were sincere. He loves me. Love. Cole's laugh was bitter. Men like Edward Ashford don't love anyone but themselves. Whatever he wrote to you, it was designed to manipulate you into trusting him, into bringing him money. I didn't bring any money. The lie came easily. Just my belongings. Cole turned to look at her fully, and Lottie felt the weight of that winter-gray gaze. Then you're either very poor or very smart. Which is it, Miss Winslow? Or should I call you by your real name? The world seemed to stop. Lottie's hand moved instinctively toward the hidden pocket in her skirt where she kept the derringer, but she stopped herself. This man hadn't threatened her, hadn't moved aggressively. He was simply watching her with those pale eyes that seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed persona. I don't know what you're talking about. She kept her voice level. My name is Clara Winslow. I'm a schoolteacher from Boston. No. Cole's voice was quiet but certain. You're Charlotte Hayes, former operative with the Pinkerton Detective Agency. You resigned your position 6 weeks ago and disappeared. What I can't figure out is why a trained detective would pose as a naive victim unless she was running her own investigation. Lottie stood quickly, her hand now openly reaching for her weapon. How do you know my name? Cole remained seated, his hands visible and empty. Because I've been investigating the same network you have. And when a Pinkerton detective suddenly takes an interest in Grant Hollis/Edward Ashford people, in my line of work notice. Your line of work. Lottie kept her distance, kept her hand near her weapon. Which is what exactly? Justice. The word was simple but carried the weight of years behind it. The legal kind when possible, the other kind when necessary. He finally stood, moving slowly so as not to spook her. Grant Hollis destroyed my sister's life 3 years ago. I've been hunting him ever since. When I heard about a schoolteacher from Boston coming west to meet Edward Ashford, I knew it was either another victim or someone playing at being one. Your cover is good, Miss Hayes, but not good enough to fool someone who knows what to look for. Lottie's mind was racing through possibilities. This could be a trap. Hollis could have sent this man to test her, or this could be exactly what it appeared to be. Another person hunting the same monster for personal reasons. Your sister, she said carefully. What happened to her? The change in Cole's expression was subtle but devastating. For just a moment the hard mask cracked, revealing the grief beneath. Eliza answered a matrimonial advertisement 4 years ago, traveled from California to Montana to meet a man calling himself William Sterling. She brought her inheritance, nearly $4,000. She never saw Sterling's face. By the time she realized she'd been swindled, she had nothing. William Sterling. The same name Mary Aldrich had mentioned before she died. Lottie felt her certainty solidifying. This man was telling the truth. And now, she asked, And now she's dead. Cole's voice was flat, final. She took her own life 8 months after returning home, couldn't live with the shame of it, of being fooled, of having to admit to everyone who warned her that they were right. Lottie thought of Mary walking into the lake, of the case file stamped with those damning words, "Victim deceased." "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry." Cole's eyes met hers, and there was steel in them now. "Be useful. You're here to bring down Hollis. So am I. We can work together or get in each other's way. Your choice." "How do I know I can trust you?" "You don't." He pulled something from his coat pocket, a photograph worn from handling. "But maybe this will help." Lottie took the photograph. It showed a young woman with dark hair and laughing eyes standing beside a man who could only be a younger version of Cole Mercer. The resemblance was unmistakable. Brother and sister caught in a moment of happiness that would never come again. "That was taken the week before Eliza left for Montana," Cole said quietly. She was so excited, so certain she was finally going to have the life she dreamed of. I didn't have the heart to tell her I was skeptical. Thought maybe I was just being overprotective. His jaw tightened. I should have stopped her. Lottie handed back the photograph. "You couldn't have known. I could have tried harder." He tucked the photograph away with the care of someone handling sacred relics. "But I can't change the past. All I can do is make sure Hollis doesn't destroy anyone else's future." "And how exactly do you plan to do that?" "By finding out who he works for." Cole turned to face her fully. "Hollis isn't operating alone. He's part of a network. Eliza figured that out before she died. She sent me letters, said she was investigating something bigger than one con man." Then she went silent. "By the time I found her, it was too late to ask questions." Lottie felt her pulse quicken. This aligned perfectly with her own investigation. "What makes you think the network still exists?" "Because Hollis is still active, still using the same methods. If he was working alone, he would have changed his pattern by now. But he hasn't, which means someone is protecting him, providing resources, and that someone needs to be exposed." "So what do you want from me?" Cole considered her for a long moment. "Information. Access. Whatever your Pinkerton training can provide. In exchange, I'll give you everything I've learned in 3 years of hunting this network. Contacts, locations, names. And when we finally bring Hollis down, you'll get the credit for the arrest. All I want is to look him in the eye before he hangs." It was a reasonable offer, more than reasonable, but Lottie had learned through bitter experience that reasonable offers often hid dangerous complications. "What aren't you telling me?" Cole's slight smile held no humor. "You really are good. All right, full disclosure. I've been working outside the law for most of this investigation. I've bent rules, crossed lines, done things that would get me arrested if anyone could prove it. If you work with me, you'll be complicit in that. Your Pinkerton reputation will be compromised. Your career will be over. So think carefully before you agree." He studied the woman before him. 28 years old according to the Pinkerton records he'd reviewed, young to have risen so high in the agency, young to have already accumulated so many ghosts in her eyes. Lottie thought of Mary Aldrich sinking beneath the water, of Eliza Mercer's laughing face in that photograph, of all the women whose names she would never know who had been swallowed by this network and forgotten. "My career was over the moment I took this case without authorization," she said. "I'm not here as a Pinkerton detective. I'm here as someone who failed to save a woman who deserved better. And I won't fail again." "Then we have a deal." Cole extended his hand. Lottie took it. His grip was firm, calloused from years of ranch work, but his shake was brief and businesslike. "So what's our next move? First, you need to maintain your cover. Clara Winslow, the abandoned bride, will stay at the station for a few more days. People need to see you waiting, need to remember you. That will draw attention from Hollis's network if they're watching. And you. I'll take you back to the Bar M. Tell Ezra and anyone else who asks that I'm offering you work as a bookkeeper. It's true enough. My accounts are a disaster. You'll have legitimate reason to be on my property while we plan our next steps." Lottie nodded slowly. "And if Hollis makes contact while I'm there, then we'll be ready for him." Cole turned to look at the horizon where the sun was sinking toward the mountains. 3 years I've been hunting this bastard, 3 years of dead ends and near misses. But I'm closer now than I've ever been. and with your help we might actually finish this." The first stars were appearing in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, Grant Hollis was going about his business confident that he was untouchable, that the law would never catch up with him, that the women he destroyed didn't matter. He was wrong. The next 3 days passed in a carefully choreographed performance. Lottie sat on the bench at Bitter Creek Station, playing the role of the abandoned bride with enough conviction to fool everyone except Cole Mercer. She let Ezra see her growing desperation, let the other travelers who passed through witness her decline from hopeful to heartbroken. Created exactly the story she needed people to remember. Cole visited each day ostensibly to check if she needed anything. In reality, he was filling her in on his investigation. 3 years of accumulated intelligence delivered in low conversations that looked like nothing more than a rancher showing kindness to a stranded woman. On the 4th day, Cole made his offer publicly, loudly enough for Ezra and several others to hear. "Miss Winslow, I can't in good conscience leave you here with no prospects. My ranch needs a bookkeeper, someone educated who can manage accounts and correspondence. The pay is $30 a month, room and board included. It's honest work and it would give you time to figure out your next steps." Lottie had played her part perfectly. Reluctance, suspicion. The appropriate hesitation of a woman who had learned too late about trusting strangers. But eventually, she had accepted. What choice did she have? They left Bitter Creek Station at first light on the 5th day. As they rode north toward the Bar M, Lottie felt the weight of her performance lifting slightly. No more playing the victim, no more pretending to be helpless. Out here with just Cole and the endless Montana landscape, she could be herself again. "Your foreman," she said, after an hour of riding in silence. "Joshua Burns. What does he know about your investigation?" "Everything." Cole's eyes remained fixed on the trail ahead. "Joshua and I rode together when I was still a marshal. He knows what I'm doing and why. You can trust him. And the rest of your men, they know I'm looking for someone, but not the details. The fewer people who know the truth, the fewer potential leaks." They reached the Bar M as the sun was climbing toward its zenith. The ranch spread out across a valley that seemed to go on forever, backed by mountains that still held snow on their peaks, even in October. It was beautiful in a harsh, unforgiving way, the kind of place that would kill you if you weren't strong enough to survive it. A man emerged from the barn as they approached. Older than Cole by at least 15 years, with a weathered face that had seen too much sun and too little kindness. His eyes tracked Lottie with undisguised suspicion. "Joshua." Cole dismounted and handed his reins to a young ranch hand who had appeared from somewhere. "This is Charlotte Hayes. She'll be helping with the books." Joshua's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition of the name, perhaps, or just the natural wariness of someone who had learned to trust slowly. "Ma'am," he nodded without warmth. "Cole tell you about his crusade?" "He did." And you're fool enough to help him." "I have my own reasons." Lottie met his stare without flinching. "Someone needs to stop Hollis. If the law won't do it, then people like us will." Joshua studied her for another long moment, then grunted. "We'll see if you're still singing that tune in a week. Cole's obsession has a way of consuming people." He turned and walked back toward the barn, leaving Lottie alone with Cole and the weight of what she had committed herself to. "Don't mind Joshua," Cole said quietly. "He's protective because he's seen what this hunt has cost me, but he'll come around once he sees you're serious. And if I'm not serious enough, then you'll leave." Cole looked at her with those winter gray eyes. "I won't stop you. This isn't a prison, Miss Hayes. It's a partnership, and partnerships only work when both people choose to stay." The house Cole led her to was smaller than she expected. A main building with a kitchen and common area, plus several smaller structures that served as bunkhouses and storage. Her room was tiny but clean, with a narrow bed, a washstand, and a small desk beneath the single window. "It's not much," Cole said from the doorway, "but it's private. No one will bother you here. It's perfect." And it was. Lottie had lived in worse places during investigations. At least this one had a door that locked and a window she could escape through if necessary. "I'll let you settle in. When you're ready, the study is through the main house. That's where I keep what passes for financial records. Fair warning, they're a mess. I'm better with cattle than I am with numbers." After he left, Lottie unpacked her few belongings. The false bottom of her traveling case yielded the derringer her coded notes and a small photograph she carried with her always. Mary Aldrich smiling at the camera 3 days before she walked into Lake Michigan. Lottie had taken the photograph from the girl's belongings after her death. A reminder, a promise. She set the photograph on the small desk where she would see it every day, where it would remind her why she was here, why she couldn't fail again. That evening, after a simple meal prepared by Cole's cook, Lottie made her way to the study. It was exactly as disastrous as Cole had warned. Papers everywhere, ledgers filled with cramped handwriting and crossed-out figures, receipts stuffed into drawers with no apparent organization. It would take weeks to sort through this chaos and create any semblance of order. But Lottie had learned patience in her years with Pinkerton, and she had learned that chaos often hid important details. She began sorting papers into piles, creating systems where none had existed, and all the while she watched for anything unusual, any transaction that didn't fit, any name that seemed out of place. It was nearly midnight when she found it, a receipt for a monthly payment to something called Meadowlark Sanatorium in Helena. The amount was substantial, $200 paid on the first of every month for the past 6 months. And in the notation field, written in Cole's distinctive handwriting, were 2 letters, E.M. Lottie's heart began to race. E.M. Eliza Mercer. But Cole had said his sister was dead, had shown her the grief in his eyes when he spoke of her suicide. So why was he making payments to a sanatorium unless Eliza wasn't dead at all? Lottie spent the next hour searching through more records, found more receipts, all made out to Meadowlark Sanatorium, all with the same notation, E.M. Monthly Care. She heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly gathered the receipts. Cole appeared in the doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee. He took one look at her face and went very still. "You found them." It wasn't a question. "E.M. is Eliza Mercer, isn't it?" Lottie stood holding the receipts like evidence. "You lied. Your sister isn't dead." Cole set down the coffee cups with hands that trembled slightly. For a long moment he said nothing. Then he closed the study door and turned to face her with an expression of such raw pain that Lottie almost regretted pushing. She might as well be dead. His voice was barely above a whisper. "The woman in that sanatorium isn't my sister. Not the one I knew." "What happened?" Cole moved to the window, staring out at the darkness. 8 months ago, I got a letter from a doctor in Helena. He said they had a patient who matched Eliza's description. No memory, no identification. She had been found wandering the streets, confused and disoriented. The doctor thought it was trauma-induced amnesia. I went to see her. He stopped, his jaw working. She looked at me like I was a stranger, didn't recognize her own brother. The doctor said her memories might return with time and proper care. I tried to question his methods, but he cited patient confidentiality, said the trauma was too severe for family intervention. Cole's voice hardened. I was desperate enough to believe him, desperate enough to hope that time and medicine could bring her back. I didn't want to see that maybe he was the one keeping her trapped. Visiting when I can, hoping that one day she'll remember. But she hasn't. No. The word was heavy with defeat. If anything, she's gotten worse. More distant, more lost. The last time I visited, she barely spoke, just sat there staring at nothing. Lottie thought of the woman in the photograph, laughing eyes and hope for the future. Tried to reconcile that image with what Cole was describing. The doctor. Do you trust him? I don't trust anyone. Cole turned back to face her. But I don't have much choice. Meadowlark is the only facility in the territory that specializes in cases like Eliza's, and Dr. Cross comes highly recommended. Dr. Cross. Lottie committed the name to memory. When did you last visit? 2 weeks ago. Right before I heard about you coming west to meet Edward Ashford. I had to choose between staying with Eliza and investigating Hollis. I chose the investigation because you think finding Hollis will help Eliza remember. Because I think whoever destroyed my sister's mind is connected to Hollis. Cole's voice hardened. Eliza wasn't some naive girl who fell for a con. She was smart, curious. She wouldn't have just disappeared without leaving some kind of trail. Unless someone made sure she couldn't. Lottie felt pieces clicking into place. You think they did something to her, something to erase her memories. I think my sister found out something she wasn't supposed to know. And I think someone decided the easiest way to silence her was to take away her ability to remember what she learned. It sounded paranoid, conspiracy thinking at its worst. But Lottie had learned in her years with Pinkerton that the most paranoid theories were sometimes the truest ones. If you're right, then Eliza is in danger. If whoever did this to her finds out she's still alive, still potentially able to remember. I know. Cole's hands clenched into fists. That's why I've kept her existence a secret, why I use aliases when I visit, why I pay in cash and never leave a trail. But I can't protect her forever. Eventually they'll find out. And when they do. And he didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. Lottie made a decision. Tomorrow I'm going to Helena. I need to see Eliza for myself, and I need to investigate this Meadowlark Sanatorium. If something wrong is happening there, we need to know. It's dangerous. If Hollis's people are watching the sanatorium and they see you, then we'll have confirmation that Eliza is connected to all of this. Lottie's voice was firm. I'm not asking your permission, Cole. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. You can help or you can stay here, but I'm going. Cole studied her for a long moment. Then unexpectedly he smiled. You really are as stubborn as they say. Your colleagues at Pinkerton. I did my research too, Miss Hayes. You have a reputation for not letting cases go, for pushing long after everyone else has given up. It's what got you in trouble with your superiors, and it's exactly what we need now. Before Lottie could respond, there was a sharp knock at the study door. Joshua entered without waiting for an invitation, his face grim. Cole, letter just arrived. Special delivery. He handed over an envelope, unmarked, no return address. Cole opened it with hands that had gone steady with the calm of someone expecting bad news. Lottie watched his face drain of color as he read. What is it? Cole handed her the letter without speaking. The handwriting was elegant, precise. The words were brief but devastating. We know about EM. We know you've been visiting. If you want to see your sister alive again, you will cease all investigation into our operations immediately. You have 7 days to comply. If you do not, EM will disappear, permanently. This is your only warning. No signature, no threats beyond the obvious, just 7 days between Eliza Mercer and death. Lottie looked up at Cole. His face had gone absolutely still, but his eyes burned with a fury that took her breath away. 7 days, he said quietly. They're giving us 7 days to choose between justice and Eliza's life. Then we don't choose. Lottie's voice was steady. We do both. We find your sister, and we bring down everyone involved in this network. All of it. No compromises. That's impossible. We don't even know where they're keeping her. The letter says to cease investigation, which means they're worried about what we might find, which means we're close to something important. Lottie began pacing her mind, racing through possibilities. They want us to stop. That's their mistake. Because now we know they're watching. Now we know Eliza is valuable to them somehow. And now we have a timeline. Cole stared at her. You're talking about going on the offensive. I'm talking about refusing to be controlled by fear. Lottie turned to face him fully. 7 days is more than enough time to tear this network apart, but only if we stop playing defense and start hitting back. And if we fail, if they kill Eliza, then at least we'll know we tried everything. Lottie's voice gentled. Cole, you've been hunting these people for 3 years, playing it safe, following rules, and where has it gotten you? Your sister is still lost. Hollis is still free. The network is still operating. Maybe it's time to try something different. Cole looked at the letter again. 7 days. 7 days to save Eliza or watch her die trying. 7 days to finish what he had started or lose everything that mattered. He looked up at Lottie, this woman who had walked into his life with her own ghosts and her own determination to make things right. This detective who had given up everything to chase justice for a girl she barely knew. All right, he said. 7 days. We find Eliza. We expose the network. We bring them all down. Together. Together. He extended his hand again, and this time when Lottie took it, the handshake felt less like a business agreement and more like a pact sealed in desperation and hope. Outside, the Montana night stretched vast and cold beneath stars that had witnessed countless tragedies and offered no comfort. But inside that small study, surrounded by chaos and secrets and impossible odds, two people who had nothing left to lose made a promise to each other. No more waiting. No more playing by rules that only protected the guilty. 7 days to war. The countdown had begun. Day 2 of 7. Dawn came to the Bar M with the kind of cold that made bones ache and breath freeze in the air. Lottie stood at her window watching frost patterns form on the glass and thought about time. 7 days, 168 hours, each one slipping away like water through desperate fingers. Cole found her in the kitchen an hour later, already dressed for travel, her small traveling case packed and ready. He looked like he hadn't slept. Dark circles beneath those winter-gray eyes, tension in every line of his body. "We need to be smart about this," he said without preamble. "If Hollis's network knows we're investigating, they'll be watching for any obvious moves." Lottie poured coffee with steady hands. "So we give them what they expect to see. You stop investigating, publicly, visibly. Make it clear that you're backing off to protect Eliza. And what will you be doing while I'm performing surrender? Going to Helena, but not as Charlotte Hayes detective, as Clara Winslow abandoned bride looking for work in the city. It's a logical next step for my cover story. No one will question it." Cole absorbed this. "And once you're in Helena, I find Sarah Blackwood." Lottie pulled a folded letter from her pocket. "I've been corresponding with her since I started this investigation. She doesn't know I'm here yet, but she'll help. She owes me." "Owes you for what?" Lottie thought of a rainy night in St. Louis, a warehouse basement, a woman chained to a wall, and the 3 men who had learned too late that Charlotte Hayes carried more than just good intentions. "I pulled her out of a situation similar to what happened to your sister, before it was too late. She swore if I ever needed anything, I just had to ask. And you think she'll know about Meadowlark? I think anyone who survived that network knows things they're not supposed to know. The question is whether she'll share them." Lottie met Cole's gaze steadily. "But I can be very persuasive when necessary." Joshua appeared in the doorway, his weathered face impassive. "Stage leaves for Helena in 2 hours. Already told them you'd be on it, miss. Paid your fare." He looked at Cole. "And I spread word in town last night. Told everyone who'd listen that you're done chasing ghosts, that you finally accepted your sister's death, and you're focusing on the ranch." "Will they believe it?" Lottie asked. "Not the smart ones, but the smart ones aren't the problem. It's the talkers we need, the gossips who'll spread the story until it reaches the right ears." Joshua's eyes were hard. "You've got maybe 3 days before Hollis's people figure out it's a feint. Make them count." After Joshua left, Cole walked Lottie to the stable where her horse was being prepared. The morning air was sharp enough to hurt, and their words came out in clouds of vapor. "I should be going with you," Cole said. "You need to be here, visible, doing exactly what they expect." Lottie adjusted her traveling cloak. "Besides, I work better alone. That's what worries me." Cole's hand caught her arm, gentle but insistent. "Miss Hayes, Charlotte. These people have already proven they're willing to destroy lives. If they even suspect you're digging into their operation, then I'll be careful." She looked at his hand on her arm, then up at his face. Saw concern there that went beyond professional partnership. Something warmer, more dangerous. "I've survived 3 years with Pinkerton. I know how to handle myself." "I know you do, but knowing and watching you right away are 2 different things." The moment stretched between them. Too long, too charged. Lottie pulled away gently. 7 days, Cole. We don't have time for complications." "No." His voice was rough. "We don't." The stage to Helena was crowded with miners and merchants, none of whom paid any attention to the quiet woman in the corner with the mourning face. Lottie used the journey to refine her plan. Sarah Blackwood ran a boarding house on the edge of Helena's respectable district, a place that catered to women in difficult circumstances. The perfect cover for gathering information. Helena itself was bigger than Lottie expected, a territorial capital trying hard to become a city, brick buildings alongside rough timber structures, boardwalks that turned to mud between blocks, the smell of coal smoke and ambition. She found Sarah's boarding house as the sun was setting, a 3-story building with clean windows and a sign that read, "Blackwood House, respectable lodging for ladies." The woman who answered her knock was in her early 40s with careful eyes and the kind of beauty that had survived hard years. "Help you, miss." Then recognition flickered. "Charlotte." "Hello, Sarah." Sarah pulled her inside, quickly glancing up and down the street before closing the door. "What are you doing here? Last I heard you'd left Pinkerton." "I did. But I didn't leave the work." Lottie let Sarah lead her to a private parlor away from the other residents. "I need information about a network that targets women through matrimonial advertisements." Sarah's face went carefully blank. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do, because you survived it 3 years ago, before I found you in that St. Louis warehouse." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut. Sarah moved to the window, her back to Lottie. When she finally spoke, her voice was distant, haunted. "You saved my life that night. Killed 3 men to do it. Never asked for thanks or credit. Just made sure I got home safely and told me to build a new life." She turned. "So I did. This boarding house, this respectable existence. I've worked hard to leave that nightmare behind. Why are you asking me to drag it back up?" "Because they're still operating, still destroying women." Lottie kept her voice gentle but firm. "A woman named Eliza Mercer, another named Mary Aldrich. How many more, Sarah? How many more have to die before someone stops them?" "You can't stop them." Sarah's laugh was bitter. "You don't understand how deep this goes, how protected they are." "Then help me understand, please." Sarah studied her for a long moment. Then she moved to a locked cabinet, retrieved a bottle of whiskey, and poured 2 glasses. "You'll need this." They sat across from each other in the fading light, and Sarah began to talk. It started small. A man placing advertisements, women responding, romance through letters, then invitations to come west. The women would arrive with their savings ready to start new lives, and they'd vanish. "Into brothels?" Lottie asked. "Sometimes, but not always. The beautiful ones, the educated ones, they were worth more intact. They'd be transported to San Francisco, sold to wealthy men who wanted wives but didn't want the complications of courtship. Or they'd be shipped further. China, South America, places where no one would look for them." Lottie felt ice settling in her stomach. "How many?" "I don't know, dozens, hundreds. I was only with them for 6 months before you found me, but I saw at least 20 women pass through." Sarah took a long drink. "The ones who resisted, who tried to escape or fight back, they were dealt with. Sometimes killed, sometimes broken in other ways. There's a place called Meadowlark Sanatorium. Do you know it?" Sarah's glass stopped halfway to her lips. "How do you know about Meadowlark?" "A woman I'm looking for. Eliza Mercer. She was investigating this network 4 years ago. She disappeared. Her brother has been paying for her care at Meadowlark, but I think something wrong is happening there." "Something wrong" is an understatement. Sarah set down her glass with hands that trembled slightly. "Meadowlark isn't a sanatorium. It's where they send the women who know too much. The ones who can't be killed because their deaths would raise questions. They have a doctor there, Dr. Vincent Cross. He specializes in memory erasure." The room seemed to tilt. Memory erasure. "A drug called lethe serum, named after the river of forgetfulness in Greek mythology. It destroys memories. Not all of them, but enough. The women who are treated with it become shells, empty, compliant. They forget who they were, what they knew, why they were dangerous." Lottie thought of Cole's description of his sister, staring at nothing, not recognizing her own brother. And this Dr. Cross, who does he work for? That's where it gets complicated. Sarah leaned forward. "The whole operation is run by a man named Victor Crane. On the surface, he's a respectable businessman, cattle broker, land speculator, pillar of the community. But underneath, he controls everything. The advertisements, the recruitment, the transportation network, the sanatorium. All of it." Victor Crane. The name clicked in Lottie's memory. Cole had mentioned him. A merchant the Bar M had done business with. "Does Crane operate alone?" "He has people. Hollis is one of them. There are others. But Crane is the spider at the center of the web. If you want to bring down the network, you have to get to him." "How?" Sarah's smile was grim. "You'd have to become one of the women he wants. Educated, attractive, vulnerable. You'd have to let yourself be recruited. Get close enough to gather evidence, and pray you can get out before they realize what you're doing." "Can you help me get recruited? Charlotte, are you insane?" These people don't just destroy lives, they erase them. If they catch you, I know the risks. Lottie's voice was steel. But I also know that if I don't try, they'll keep operating, keep destroying. And Eliza Mercer will spend the rest of her life as a ghost because I was too afraid to act. Sarah studied her for a long moment. Then she sighed. There's a woman named Rose. She works as Crane's recruiter, identifies potential targets, makes the initial contact. If anyone can get you close to Crane, it's her. But she's smart, suspicious. You'll have to convince her you're exactly what Crane is looking for. Where do I find her? The Silver Palace Hotel. She poses as a social reformer, helps unfortunate women find new opportunities. It's how she earns their trust before selling them. Sarah's voice was bitter. I'll send word that I have a friend who needs help, someone educated who fell on hard times. That should get you a meeting. Thank you, Sarah. Don't thank me yet. You might not survive this to regret it. That night, Lottie lay in a narrow bed in Sarah's boarding house and thought about the choice she was making. This was beyond anything Pinkerton had trained her for, beyond the law, beyond safety. She was about to walk voluntarily into the same trap that had destroyed Eliza Mercer and Mary Aldrich and countless others. But she was also different from those women. She knew what she was walking into. She had weapons and training, and she had something they hadn't: the determination to make sure no one else suffered the same fate. Somewhere in the darkness she heard footsteps in the hall, then a soft knock at her door. She had her derringer in hand before the second knock fell. It's Sarah. Lottie opened the door to find Sarah holding a telegram. This just arrived for you, from the Bar M. The message was brief, written in code they had agreed upon. Package missing from expected location. Stop. Complications arising. Stop. Advise caution. Stop. Lottie's blood ran cold. Package meant Eliza. Missing meant exactly what it sounded like. Bad news, Sarah asked. The woman I'm looking for. She's not at Meadowlark anymore. Lottie's mind raced. Either they moved her or they've already dealt with her. Sarah's voice was gentle. I'm sorry. No, she's alive. She has to be. Lottie looked up. When can I meet Rose? Tomorrow afternoon. But Charlotte, if Eliza is already gone, maybe you should... I should what? Give up. Go home. Lottie's laugh was harsh. There is no home. There's only this. Finding these people, stopping them, making sure they can't hurt anyone else. Sarah nodded slowly. Then get some sleep. You'll need your strength for tomorrow. The next day dawned gray and cold. Lottie dressed carefully. Not too fine, but not shabby. The appearance of a woman who had known better days but still maintained her dignity. Clara Winslow, schoolteacher, fallen on hard times and desperate for any opportunity. The Silver Palace Hotel was Helena's attempt at elegance. Red velvet curtains, crystal chandeliers, the kind of place that catered to successful miners and territorial politicians. Rose received her in a private parlor on the third floor. She was younger than Lottie expected. Perhaps 30, with carefully curled blonde hair and eyes that calculated value with every glance. Her smile was warm. Her handshake was firm. Everything about her screamed trustworthy, professional woman. Miss Winslow Sarah speaks very highly of you. Please sit. Would you care for tea? They went through the ritual of polite conversation. The weather, the challenges of frontier life. The difficulties educated women faced in finding suitable employment. Rose was good. Very good. She made Lottie feel heard, understood, valued. Sarah mentioned you were recently disappointed in a romantic arrangement, Rose said eventually. A gentleman who proved less than honorable. Lottie let pain flicker across her face. I'd rather not discuss it. Suffice to say, I made poor choices and trusted unwisely. We've all been there, my dear. The important thing is moving forward, building a new future. Rose leaned forward conspiratorially. I work with an organization that helps women in your situation. We connect educated, respectable ladies with opportunities, good positions, fair wages, a chance to start fresh. What kind of positions? Governesses, tutors, companions to wealthy families, the sort of work that values your education and refinement. Rose's smile widened. Some of our placements are quite lucrative. Women who join our program often find themselves far better off than they ever imagined. It was smoothly done. No overt promises, no specific details, just the suggestion of prosperity and security, exactly the kind of pitch that would appeal to a desperate woman. "It sounds wonderful," Lottie said carefully. "But surely there must be some sort of fee or obligation." "Nothing like that. We're funded by philanthropic gentlemen who believe in helping women achieve their potential. All we ask is that you're willing to relocate if the right position becomes available. Some of our best opportunities are in San Francisco or abroad." There it was, the hook buried in honey. Lottie let herself look hopeful, grateful. "I would be very interested in learning more." "Excellent. But before we proceed, I'll need to arrange a meeting with my employer. He likes to personally approve all our candidates, make sure they're suitable for our program." "Of course. When would this meeting be?" "Tonight, if you're available. Mr. Crane keeps unusual hours due to his business commitments." Victor Crane. Sarah's warning echoed in Lottie's mind. The spider at the center of the web. She was about to walk directly into his presence. Tonight would be perfect. "Wonderful. Meet me here at 8 o'clock. And Miss Winslow." Rose's smile took on a sharper edge. "Do dress nicely. First impressions matter to Mr. Crane." Lottie spent the afternoon preparing. Not just her appearance, but her mind. She reviewed every detail of Clara Winslow's cover story, every manufactured memory, every fabricated detail. One slip could mean exposure. Exposure could mean death. Sarah found her as she was getting ready. "You don't have to do this. We could find another way." "There is no other way. Not in 7 days." Lottie checked the derringer hidden in her sleeve. "If something happens, if I don't come back. There's a letter in my room addressed to Cole Mercer at the Bar M. Make sure he gets it." "What does it say?" "Everything I know about the network. Names, locations, evidence. Enough for him to finish this, even if I can't." Lottie met Sarah's eyes in the mirror. "And tell him I'm sorry I failed." "You haven't failed yet." "No, but I might. And if I do, someone needs to keep fighting." At 8 o'clock precisely, Lottie presented herself at the Silver Palace. Rose was waiting, dressed in elegant evening attire. "Perfect timing. Mr. Crane is ready for us." They took a private carriage through Helena's darkening streets, away from the respectable center, toward the warehouse district where questions weren't asked and screams went unheard. Lottie's hand stayed near her hidden weapon. The carriage stopped at a large building that had once been a grain warehouse. Light spilled from windows on the upper floor. Rose led Lottie inside and up a narrow staircase to a room that had been converted into something resembling an office. Expensive furniture, Persian rugs, the trappings of wealth displayed like a peacock's feathers. And standing by the window, silhouetted against the lamplight, was a man Lottie recognized from Cole's descriptions. Victor Crane was perhaps 50, with silver threading through dark hair, and the kind of presence that came from years of wielding power. He turned as they entered, and his smile was warm, paternal, utterly false. "Miss Winslow, Rose has told me wonderful things about you. Please sit." Lottie settled into the offered chair, every sense on alert. Crane studied her with eyes that missed nothing. She felt evaluated, priced, catalogued like merchandise. "You were a schoolteacher, I understand, in Boston?" "Yes, sir, at the Fairchild Academy for Young Ladies." "And you came west for a romantic prospect that didn't materialize." Crane's tone was sympathetic. "These frontier men can be unreliable. I'm sorry you were disappointed." "I'm trying to move forward, to find new opportunities." "Admirable, very admirable." Crane moved to his desk, opened a drawer, and pulled out a file. "Rose mentioned you have excellent references. Education, refinement, exactly the qualities our program values." He opened the file, and Lottie's heart stopped. Inside were photographs, not of Clara Winslow, of Charlotte Hayes. Pinkerton identification, case files, everything. Crane looked up, and his smile had changed, still warm, but now with teeth. "Or should I say the qualities that make you a very interesting problem, Miss Hayes?" The derringer was in Lottie's hand before Crane finished speaking. But Rose was faster. The click of a pistol being cocked came from behind her. "I wouldn't, dear. Mr. Crane and I have been expecting you." Lottie's mind raced through options. The door was blocked. Rose had the advantage of position. Crane probably had additional security nearby. Fighting her way out was suicide. "How long have you known," she asked, keeping her voice steady, "since Rose first contacted you?" Crane settled back in his chair, completely at ease despite the weapon pointed at his chest. "Did you really think we wouldn't recognize Charlotte Hayes, the Pinkerton detective who's been asking questions about our operations for the past year? You're quite famous in certain circles." "If you knew why bring me here, because I wanted to meet the woman brave enough or stupid enough to walk into my trap." Crane's eyes glittered. "And because you're worth far more to me than the average recruit. A trained detective, educated, attractive. There are buyers who would pay a fortune for someone with your credentials." Lottie felt ice flood her veins. "You're going to sell me." "Eventually, but first I need to know what you've learned, who you've told, what evidence you've gathered." Crane nodded to Rose. "Take her weapon." Rose moved with professional efficiency, disarmed Lottie, bound her hands with rope that bit into skin. Through it all, Lottie stayed silent, her mind working desperately for any advantage. "You won't get away with this," she said. "People know I'm here. If I disappear, people will assume you met the same fate as Mary Aldrich, another tragic victim of frontier dangers." Crane's voice was almost kind. "Don't worry, Miss Hayes. We'll take good care of you, just as we've taken care of Eliza Mercer." The name hit like a physical blow. "Where is she?" "Somewhere safe. Somewhere you'll join her very soon." Crane stood. "I must say I admire your dedication. Throwing away your career for this crusade. But I'm afraid your investigation ends here. Rose, take Miss Hayes to the holding facility. We'll deal with her after I've concluded my other business tonight." As Rose marched her down the stairs at gunpoint, Lottie's mind catalogued everything. The layout of the building, the sounds from other rooms, the fact that Crane mentioned other business, which meant he wasn't leaving immediately. Small details that might mean nothing or might be the difference between life and death. They put her in a room that had once been a storage closet, stone walls, single barred window too small to escape through, a metal chair bolted to the floor. Rose secured Lottie to the chair with practiced ease. "Nothing personal," Rose said as she worked, "but Mr. Crane pays well, and I've learned not to ask too many questions." "You were in my position once," Lottie said quietly. "Before they recruited you, before you decided selling other women was easier than being sold yourself." Rose's hands hesitated, just for a moment. "That was a long time ago. I'm different now." "Are you? Or are you just telling yourself that so you can sleep at night? Save your breath, detective. No one's coming to rescue you." Rose moved to the door. "Though for what it's worth, I do admire your courage. Most women would be begging by now." "Most women haven't spent 3 years learning to survive anything." Rose paused in the doorway. "We'll see if that's still true tomorrow." The door closed. The lock clicked. And Charlotte Hayes sat alone in the dark, bound to a chair in the heart of enemy territory, with no rescue coming and no way out. 7 days had become 6, then 5. Now Lottie wasn't sure she'd survive to see 4, but she was still breathing, still thinking, still dangerous. And somewhere in this building, there might be evidence, information, something that could bring Crane's entire operation crashing down. All she had to do was survive long enough to use it. Meanwhile, 40 miles north, Cole Mercer was standing in the ruins of Meadowlark Sanatorium, staring at evidence that changed everything. The sanatorium had been abandoned in a hurry, medical equipment left behind, files scattered, and in Dr. Cross's office hidden in a false drawer, Cole had found research notes that made his blood run cold. Subject EM memory suppression successful at 87%. Remaining fragments persist despite multiple treatments. Subject demonstrates unusual resistance to lethoserum. Recommend increased dosage or permanent disposal. The date on the report was 1 week ago, which meant Eliza had been alive then, but the final notation sent ice through Cole's heart. Subject transferred to primary facility per VC orders. Location classified. Treatment to continue until full compliance achieved or subject expires. VC Victor Crane, the name Joshua had mentioned. The cattle broker Cole had done business with for years, the man who had been funding this nightmare. Cole was still processing this when hoofbeats thundered into the courtyard. Joshua riding hard, his face grim, but Joshua wasn't alone. Behind him rode a man in a federal marshal's badge. Thomas Whitaker, Territory Marshal, from Helena. Mr. Mercer. Whitaker dismounted, his face grim. I received your telegram yesterday. You said you had evidence of a criminal network operating across territorial lines. Cole's telegram, sent 2 days ago when he first suspected Crane's involvement. A desperate gamble that federal authority might succeed where he had failed. He handed over the research notes. The receipts documenting payments to Meadowlark. The names he had been collecting for 3 years. Victor Crane, cattle broker, pillar of the community, and the man running the largest human trafficking operation in the territory. Whitaker read in silence. His expression darkened with each page. This is extensive, but it's also circumstantial. We'd need more to make arrests stick. Testimony. Witnesses. Caught in the act. I'll get you more. Cole's voice was ice. Crane has my sister, and he's taken a woman named Charlotte Hayes, formerly with Pinkerton. That's kidnapping of law enforcement personnel, federal jurisdiction, if we can prove he has them. Give me until tomorrow's sunset. I'll deliver Crane his operation and enough evidence to hang him twice over, but I need federal marshals ready to move when I call. Can you do that? Whitaker studied Cole's face, saw the determination there, the barely controlled fury of a man who had spent 3 years hunting and was finally closing in for the kill. I can have 20 men ready, but Mercer, if this goes wrong, if innocent people die, it won't. Cole swung back into his saddle. I've been waiting 3 years for this. I'm not letting him escape now. Then Joshua burst from the stable, telegram in hand. Cole, it's Miss Hayes. Sarah Blackwood sent word. She went to meet Crane last night and never came back. The world tilted. Cole grabbed Joshua's arm. What do you mean, never came back? She was supposed to return by midnight. When she didn't, Sarah went to the hotel, found the room empty. No sign of struggle, but this was on the desk. Joshua handed over a note, written in elegant script. Mr. Mercer, your associate has proven most interesting. If you wish to see her alive, you will bring yourself to Crane Ranch by sunset tomorrow. Come alone. Come unarmed, or Miss Hayes and your sister will both die. You have my word on that. Victor Crane. Cole crumpled the note in his fist. He has them both. Looks that way. Question is, what are you going to do? Cole stared at the horizon, his jaw set with the kind of determination that came from having nothing left to lose. I'm going to get them back. Both of them. That's suicide. Crane will have men, weapons. You can't take on his whole operation alone. Then it's a good thing I don't plan to go alone. Cole turned to face Joshua. Gather the men. Everyone you trust. We ride at dawn. Cole, this is madness. This is justice. Cole's eyes were winter ice. Crane wanted a war. He's about to get one. As night fell over Montana, 3 people faced impossible choices. Lottie bound in darkness, planning her escape. Eliza somewhere in the void fighting to remember, and Cole preparing to burn down everything that stood between him and the women he'd sworn to protect. 7 days had become a countdown to war, and tomorrow the blood would start to flow. Day 6 of 7, 18 hours since capture. The darkness in Lottie's cell was absolute, not the gentle dark of a Montana night, but the suffocating black of a place where hope went to die. She had lost track of time. Hours, days. The cold stone beneath her had long since stolen all warmth from her body, and the rope binding her wrists had cut deep enough that she could feel blood trickling down her fingers. But Charlotte Hayes had survived worse, had endured interrogations by men who thought breaking a woman was as simple as raising their voices, had walked out of burning buildings and knife fights and situations that should have killed her. She would survive this, too. The sound of footsteps in the corridor beyond her door made her freeze, not the heavy boots of guards. Something lighter, uncertain. Then a voice, barely above a whisper, filtered through the thick wood. Was there someone there, female, young, frightened? Lottie's detective instincts kicked in immediately. Yes, my name is Charlotte. Who are you? Silence. Then so quietly Lottie almost missed it. I don't remember my name. They took it from me. Eliza, it had to be. The people who put you here. Do you remember anything about them? Faces without names. Places I can't quite picture. And a word. Jacob. I think it's important, but I don't know why. Lottie's heart hammered. Eliza was in the next room, alive, still fighting through the fog they had put in her mind. "Jacob is your brother. He's been looking for you. He sent me to find you." A gasp. Then the sound of someone sliding down the wall on the other side of the door. "Brother? I have a brother named Jacob. How do I know that? How do I know it's true? Because some truths are stronger than any drug. Some memories run too deep to erase completely." Lottie shifted, trying to ease the pain in her shoulders. "What else do you remember? Anything about the people who did this to you?" "A man, silver hair, cold eyes. He called me Subject EM. Said I knew too much, that I was dangerous." Eliza's voice grew stronger. "There were others, women like me. He showed me what would happen if I didn't cooperate. Girls strapped to beds, empty eyes, gone. That man's name is Victor Crane. He's the one who runs this operation, who took your memories and sold those other women." Lottie spoke carefully, knowing that pushing too hard could shatter whatever fragile recovery was happening. "But you're not gone, Eliza. You're still in there, still fighting." "Eliza." The name was a whisper, a prayer. "That's my name. Eliza Mercer. I was investigating. I was trying to find evidence. There was a network, bigger than anyone knew, and I got too close." "What were you investigating?" "Not just women. Money. Crane was laundering money for criminal syndicates. Chinese tongs in San Francisco, Mexican cartels. The women were just one piece. I was writing an article, exposing everything." Eliza's breath caught. "But they found out. Hollis told them, and they came for me." Hollis was working for Crane. Hollis was a coward, doing what he was told because he was afraid, but Crane was the monster. A pause. Then, with growing urgency, "You said Jacob sent you. Is he safe? They threatened to kill him if I didn't cooperate." "He's alive. And he's coming for us both." "No." Eliza's voice cracked with terror. "He can't. It's a trap. Crane wants him to come, wants him to walk right into their hands. You have to warn him. You have to—" The sound of heavy footsteps cut off whatever Eliza was about to say. Multiple sets, moving with purpose down the corridor. Lottie tensed her mind, racing through scenarios. If they were coming to move her, she might have one chance at escape, one moment when the odds shifted enough to act. The door swung open. Two men entered. Neither one she recognized. Rough types. The kind who did violence for money and slept soundly after. Behind them, Grant Hollis stood in the doorway, and the expression on his face was pure misery. "Miss Hayes?" His voice was hollow. "I'm sorry it's come to this." "Are you—" Lottie studied him with clinical detachment. "Or are you just sorry you're going to have to watch? Crane wants you moved. There's a buyer coming tonight. Someone who pays premium prices for women with your particular skill set. Let me guess, you're the one who gets to deliver me." Hollis flinched. "I don't have a choice." "Everyone has choices, Mr. Hollis. You chose money over morality, chose cowardice over courage. Don't pretend this is happening to you. You're making it happen." One of the guards stepped forward to untie her from the chair, and Lottie marked every detail: the knife on his belt, the way he favored his left leg, the fact that he underestimated her because she was a woman, mistakes she would exploit when the moment came. They hauled her to her feet, her legs nearly buckling from hours of immobility, marched her into the corridor where another door stood open. Inside, Eliza sat on a narrow cot, her face pale but her eyes clear. Clearer than they had been in years, perhaps. Whatever hold the lethe serum had on her was weakening. The two women looked at each other, and something passed between them. Recognition, solidarity, the understanding that comes from shared suffering and shared determination to survive. "Put them together," Hollis said quietly. "Crane's orders, easier to guard one room than two." The guard shoved Lottie inside and slammed the door. The lock clicked with the finality of a coffin lid closing, but Lottie barely noticed. She was already moving to Eliza's side. The woman on the cot looked younger than her 25 years, fragile in a way that spoke of suffering endured. Lottie checked her for injuries with gentle hands. "Are you hurt? Did they harm you?" "Nothing physical." Eliza's hands trembled as she reached out to touch Lottie's face, as if confirming she was real. "But they've been poisoning my mind for so long. Sometimes I can't tell what's memory and what's nightmare." "Then we'll sort through it together." Lottie sat beside her on the cot, her detective's mind already working. Tell me everything you remember about this place. Layout, guards, security, anything that might help us escape." "Escape?" Eliza laughed, the sound breaking halfway through. "There's no escaping Crane. He owns half the territory, has judges and marshals in his pocket. Even if we got out of this room, where would we go? To your brother, to safety, to justice." Lottie grabbed Eliza's shoulders, forcing the younger woman to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. Cole has been hunting Crane for 3 years, gathering evidence, building a case. We're not alone in this fight. We just have to survive long enough for help to arrive. And if help doesn't come, then we save ourselves." Lottie's voice was steel. "I've been trained by the best detectives in the country. You were brave enough to investigate a criminal empire. Together we're more dangerous than Crane knows. We just have to make him believe we're broken long enough to find our opening." Eliza studied her for a long moment. Then something shifted in her expression. The fear didn't disappear, but it was joined by something harder, something that looked almost like hope. "You sound like Jacob. He never knew when to quit either. Tell me about him. Help yourself remember." So Eliza talked. Haltingly at first, then with growing confidence as memories surfaced through the chemical fog. She talked about growing up on the Bar M, about a brother who taught her to ride and shoot and think for herself, about a father who believed women were just as capable as men and raised his daughter accordingly, about dreams of becoming a journalist, of exposing corruption and speaking for those who had no voice. "I answered Hollis's advertisement as part of my investigation," Eliza said. "I knew it was a con, that was the point. I wanted to see how deep the operation went, wanted to gather evidence from the inside. But they discovered you. I got careless, let my guard down, started asking questions I shouldn't have asked." Eliza's voice hardened. "And Hollis, the spineless coward, told Crane everything, told him I was dangerous, that I needed to be dealt with. So Crane had you injected with lethe serum. Again and again, trying to erase what I knew, but I fought it. Held on to fragments, names, faces, the knowledge that what they were doing was wrong." Eliza looked at Lottie. "And I held on to Jacob. Even when I couldn't remember his face, I remembered the feeling of being loved, being safe. That was my anchor." Before Lottie could respond, the sound of gunfire erupted from somewhere outside the building, distant at first, then closer. Shouts, running feet, the unmistakable chaos of an assault. "What's happening?" Eliza pressed against the wall, terror and hope warring in her expression. Lottie moved to the small barred window peering out into the night. She could see muzzle flashes in the darkness, men running, the silhouette of riders approaching from multiple directions. "Someone's attacking the compound." "Jacob." "Probably, which means we need to be ready to move the moment an opportunity presents itself." Lottie began examining the door. Solid wood, heavy lock. But the hinges were old, corroded. A weakness she could exploit if she had the right tools. The hairpin hidden in the seam of her dress would have to do. She had picked more complicated locks with less. The trick was patience, steady hands, and absolute focus, despite the sound of battle raging outside. Lottie worked the pin into the mechanism, feeling for the tumblers, applying pressure at precisely the right angle. "How did you learn to do that?" Eliza watched with wide eyes. "Pinkerton training. We're taught to escape from any situation." The first tumbler clicked. "Though they prefer we not get captured in the first place." 2 more tumblers. The gunfire was intensifying. Closer now. Someone was fighting their way through Crane's defenses with systematic efficiency. Lottie allowed herself a moment of hope. Cole was coming, just like he promised. The final tumbler clicked home. The lock released. Lottie eased the door open a fraction, peering into the corridor beyond. Empty. The guards had abandoned their posts to join the fight outside. "Stay behind me," Lottie whispered. "Stay quiet. If I tell you to run, you run. Understand?" Eliza nodded, her face set with determination that reminded Lottie powerfully of Cole. They moved into the corridor, Lottie in front, Eliza close behind. The building was a maze of passages and rooms, many of them locked. Lottie navigated by instinct and training, heading toward what she hoped was an exit. Behind them, the sounds of combat grew louder. They were halfway to what looked like a stairwell when a figure stepped out of the shadows. Grant Hollis, his face ashen, a pistol trembling in his hand. "Don't!" His voice shook. "Please, I can't let you leave." Lottie stepped in front of Eliza, shielding the younger woman with her body. "Then shoot me, Mr. Hollis. Add murder to your list of crimes. I'm sure Crane will be pleased." "You don't understand. If I let you go, he'll kill my family, my wife, my children. He has men watching them right now." "So you'll condemn innocent women to save your own family? How does that make you different from Crane?" Hollis's gun hand wavered. "I never wanted this, any of this. I was just supposed to write letters, make promises. I didn't know what they were going to do with the women who came west. But you found out, and you kept doing it anyway." Lottie took a step forward. "You could have gone to the authorities, could have exposed the operation, could have saved lives. Instead, you chose complicity, chose to be the bait in a trap that destroyed dozens of women. I was afraid. We're all afraid, Mr. Hollis. The question is what we do with that fear. Do we let it make us cruel, or do we find the courage to do what's right despite it?" Behind them, Eliza spoke for the first time since escaping their cell. "You told Crane I was investigating. You're the reason they came for me, the reason they stole 3 years of my life." Hollis wouldn't meet her eyes. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry. But I can't change the past. All I can do is try to protect what's left. Then help us." Lottie's voice softened. "Help us stop Crane. Testify against him. Give us the evidence we need to bring down the entire network. In exchange, I'll make sure the authorities protect your family. Get them somewhere safe where Crane can't reach them." "You can't promise that." "No, but I can try, which is more than you've done for any of the women you've helped destroy." The sound of boots on the stairs made them all freeze. Heavy, purposeful, multiple sets. Hollis's expression shifted from indecision to terror. "He's coming. Crane knows you've escaped. Then we fight." Lottie grabbed Hollis's arm. "Right now, right here, you make a choice. Are you with us or against us?" Hollis looked at the gun in his hand, felt its weight. The weight of every decision he had made that led to this moment. Every woman he had lured with false promises. Every life he had helped destroy because he was too afraid to be brave. He looked at Eliza's face and saw all of them, all the victims, all the ghosts that would haunt him whether he lived or died. His daughter was 7 years old. If she grew up and learned what her father had done, what would she think? Would she understand he had been trying to protect her, or would she see him for what he truly was, a coward? "I'm with you," he whispered, the words tasting like ashes and redemption. He handed the pistol to Lottie with trembling hands. "God help me. I'm with you." The guards appeared at the top of the stairs just as Lottie raised the weapon. She didn't hesitate, didn't warn them, just fired twice with the cold precision of someone who had learned long ago that survival sometimes required violence. Both guards went down. Lottie was already moving, grabbing Eliza's hand and pulling her toward the stairs. Hollis followed, his face the color of old parchment. They descended into chaos. The main floor of the warehouse was a war zone. Cole's men had breached the entrance and were engaged in a fierce firefight with Crane's security. Lottie counted at least 15 defenders. Crane had been prepared for an assault. She spotted Cole immediately. Impossible not to. He fought like a man possessed, moving with brutal efficiency through Crane's defenses. Joshua was at his side, covering his blind spots, their partnership forged over years, evident in every coordinated movement. "Jacob!" Eliza's scream cut through the gunfire. Cole's head whipped around, and the expression on his face when he saw his sister was beyond description. Joy and relief and anguish all compressed into a single moment. He started toward them, but a volley of gunfire forced him back into cover. Lottie assessed the situation with trained eyes. They were pinned down, outnumbered. Cole's assault had succeeded in creating chaos, but Crane's men were regrouping. This could turn into a massacre very quickly. Then she noticed what Cole apparently had not. The warehouse's main office was empty, the door standing open. Crane was gone. "Where is he?" She grabbed Hollis's shirt. "Where's Crane?" "I don't know. He said something about a buyer. A meeting at the Helena train depot. Midnight." Lottie checked her stolen watch, 11:15. If Crane was planning to transport merchandise, he would need to be at the depot before the midnight train departed, which meant he had left already, had abandoned his men to their fate while he escaped with whatever he valued most. A horrible suspicion formed in her mind. What merchandise was he taking to this buyer? Hollis's silence was answer enough. He's transporting women, tonight, on that train. Lottie turned to Eliza. Did you hear anything, see anything that might tell us how many? There were rooms upstairs, at least 10 women in cages when they brought me here, maybe more. 10 women, being loaded onto a train like cargo while everyone was distracted by the assault. Lottie felt fury rise in her throat like bile. Crane had used them. Used Cole's desperation to rescue Eliza as cover for his largest shipment yet. She caught Cole's eye across the warehouse, saw him fighting his way toward her. When he finally reached their position, she spoke before he could. Crane's not here. He's at the Helena depot, moving women onto the midnight train. Cole's expression went flat, the kind of calm that preceded violence. How many men does he have with him? Unknown. But he left 15 here to slow you down. He'll have kept his best people with the cargo. Then we go after him. Now. Cole? Lottie grabbed his arm. If we leave your men here, we'll be slaughtered. If we don't leave, 10 women die or worse. Cole looked at Eliza, drinking in the sight of his sister alive and whole. Then he looked back at Lottie. This is what we came to do. Stop Crane. Save the women. Burn his whole operation to the ground. Joshua appeared at Cole's shoulder, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. We can hold them here, give you time to reach the depot. It's 15 miles. We'll never make it before midnight. The hell you won't. Joshua jerked his head toward the back of the warehouse. Crane's got horses, fast ones. You ride hard enough, you might just catch him before that train leaves. Lottie made the decision before Cole could. Eliza stays here. With Joshua and the men, she's not strong enough for what comes next. No. Eliza's voice was iron. I've been running from these people for 3 years. I'm not hiding now, not when we're this close to finishing it. You can barely stand. I can ride, I can shoot, and I can damn well be there when we bring Crane down. Eliza met her brother's eyes. You taught me to be strong, Jacob. Don't ask me to be weak now. Cole looked at his sister, really looked at her. Saw not the broken woman from the sanatorium, but the fierce, determined journalist who had risked everything to expose corruption. He nodded slowly. All right. We ride together. We finish this together. They took Crane's best horses, 4 of them fast and fresh. Lottie had ridden since childhood, but keeping pace with Cole across 15 miles of rough Montana terrain in near darkness was the most grueling experience of her life. Eliza matched them stride for stride, her body remembering skills her mind had forgotten. Hollis struggled unused to such hard riding, but he kept up through sheer desperation. They reached Helena as church bells were striking quarter to midnight. The depot was lit like a beacon steam already rising from the waiting locomotive. Lottie could see men loading cargo onto one of the rear cars, large crates that moved wrong, too carefully, with too much concern for what was inside. There. Cole pointed to a figure supervising the loading, silver hair catching the lamplight. Victor Crane directing his operation with the calm confidence of a man who believed he had already won. We need to be smart about this, Lottie said. Crane's got at least 8 men with him. We're 4. If we just charge in, people die. Innocent people. So what do you suggest? Lottie studied the depot's layout, the placement of guards. The civilians still milling about waiting for the regular passenger train. An idea formed. Dangerous. Possibly insane. But with the element of surprise, it might just work. I walk in alone. Tell Crane I escaped, and I'm ready to make a deal. Absolutely not. Listen to me. Crane thinks I'm valuable. A trained detective he can sell for a fortune. If I surrender, he'll want to keep me alive. To gloat. To confirm I'm really giving up. That gives you time to position yourselves. To get those women out of that train car before the shooting starts. And if he just kills you on sight, then you'll know where all his men are positioned, and you can plan accordingly. Lottie's smile was grim. But he won't kill me. Not immediately. Men like Crane can't resist the chance to explain how clever they are, to make their victims understand how thoroughly they've been beaten. Cole looked like he wanted to argue, but he knew she was right. They all did. 5 minutes. If you're not back out in 5 minutes, we're coming in. Make it 10. I can keep him talking that long. Lottie dismounted and handed her reins to Eliza. For a moment, The two women looked at each other. Then Eliza spoke quietly. "Thank you for remembering me when everyone else forgot. You never needed remembering. You just needed someone to help you find yourself again." Lottie squeezed her hand. "Now help your brother save those women. That's what you were trying to do when Crane stopped you. Finish it." She walked toward the depot with her hands visible and empty. Every instinct screamed at her to run, to hide, to do anything except walk voluntarily into the hands of the man who had destroyed so many lives. But Charlotte Hayes had learned long ago to ignore instinct in favor of strategy. The guards spotted her when she was 20 feet from Crane. Weapons came up, shouts of warning. Crane himself turned, and his expression shifted from surprise to something that might have been admiration. "Miss Hayes, I must confess I'm impressed. Escaping from that warehouse took considerable skill, though I assume Mr. Mercer's assault provided some assistance." "He's dead." The lie came smoothly. "Your men killed him in the fighting. I barely got out alive." "I find that difficult to believe. Cole Mercer has proven remarkably difficult to kill over the years." "Believe what you want. I'm here because I'm a realist. You've won. Your network is too big, too well protected. The best I can hope for is survival. So I'm offering you a deal." Crane's smile widened. "And what could you possibly offer that I would want?" "Information. Everything Pinkerton knows about your operation, names of agents investigating you, evidence that's been gathered. In exchange, you let me walk away." "Walk away," Crane laughed. "My dear Miss Hayes, you're far too valuable to simply let go. I have a buyer in San Francisco willing to pay $50,000 for a woman with your particular credentials. Why would I accept information I can acquire through other means when I could have that fortune? Because the information I have could save you from the gallows, because I know things you don't know I know, because—" She let her voice drop, let desperation creep into her eyes. "Because I'm tired of fighting a battle I can't win." Crane studied her for a long moment. Then he gestured to his men. "Search her. If she's clean, bring her aboard. I want her secured before the train departs." The search was thorough and humiliating. They found nothing because there was nothing to find. Lottie had left every weapon behind, had made herself deliberately helpless, the ultimate bait. They marched her toward the train car where the crates were being loaded. As she passed, she heard sounds from inside. Whimpers, quiet sobs, the sounds of women who had given up hope. Not much longer, she thought. Just hold on a little longer. Inside the car, Crane gestured to a chair. "Sit. We have a few minutes before departure. I find myself curious. What made you think I would actually negotiate with you? The same thing that's kept you safe all these years. Arrogance. The belief that you're smarter than everyone else. That you can afford to play with your prey before you destroy it. And you're hoping that arrogance will give your friends time to mount a rescue." Crane's expression didn't change. "I'm disappointed, Miss Hayes. I expected better from you." He pulled a pocket watch from his vest. "It's now 11:55. In 5 minutes this train departs. Your Mr. Mercer has exactly that long to attempt whatever heroic assault he's planning. My men are positioned. We're ready. And when he fails, when his body is cooling on the platform alongside his sister, and that pathetic fool Hollis, you'll have the privilege of watching, of knowing that your clever plan got them all killed." Lottie kept her expression neutral, but inside her mind was racing. Crane knew, had known from the moment she walked up, this whole thing was another trap. And Cole was walking right into it. She had to warn them, had to do something. But she was bound to a chair surrounded by armed men with a criminal mastermind who had outmaneuvered her at every turn. For the first time since this whole nightmare began, Charlotte Hayes felt the cold touch of real fear, not for herself, for the people she had led into disaster. Then, from somewhere outside the train car, a voice rang out, clear, commanding, absolutely fearless. "Victor Crane? This is United States Marshal Thomas Whitaker. You are surrounded. Order your men to lay down their weapons and surrender peacefully." Crane's face went white. "That's impossible. I have judges, marshals, everyone who matters in my pocket." "You had them in your pocket." A new voice, one that made Lottie's heart leap. Cole Mercer speaking from somewhere in the darkness. "Until we gave the territorial governor evidence of your entire operation, until we showed him proof of corruption that reached so high, even he couldn't ignore it. It's over, Crane. The only question now is how many more people die before you accept that." Crane moved to the window, peering out. Lottie couldn't see what he saw, but his expression told her everything. Federal marshals, real ones, not bought and paid for, not part of his network, just lawmen doing their jobs. "This is your last warning," Marshal Whitaker called. "Surrender now or we open fire." For a moment, Crane stood frozen. Then he grabbed Lottie, hauled her to her feet, and pressed a derringer to her temple. "I'm walking out of here, and Miss Hayes is coming with me. Anyone tries to stop me and she dies." He dragged her toward the door, using her as a shield. Lottie didn't struggle, didn't resist. She had been in worse situations, had survived men who thought violence against women made them powerful. Crane was just another name on a very long list. They emerged onto the platform. Lottie could see them now. At least 20 marshals positioned around the depot, Cole and Eliza behind cover, Joshua with a rifle trained on Crane's head. And stepping forward, hands visible and empty, a man in a federal marshal's badge. "Let her go, Mr. Crane. There's nowhere for you to run." "There's always somewhere to run." Crane's voice was steady, despite the gun trembling against Lottie's skull. "I have money, resources, people who owe me favors. I'll disappear. Start again. You'll never find me." "Maybe. But you'll spend the rest of your life looking over your shoulder, wondering when we're coming, when justice finally catches up." The marshal took another step forward. "Or you can end this now. Face trial. Accept the consequences of your actions like a man instead of a coward." "I am not a coward." "Then prove it. Let Miss Hayes go." Lottie felt Crane's grip shift slightly, felt the gun barrel move a fraction of an inch away from her temple. It was all she needed. She drove her elbow back into his solar plexus with every ounce of strength she possessed, dropped her weight, twisted. The derringer discharged the bullet, passing so close to her ear she felt its heat. Then she was free, rolling away, and Cole was there, tackling Crane to the ground with the fury of 3 years of hunting crystallized into a single moment. They fought, brief, brutal, ending with Cole's forearm across Crane's throat and a promise delivered in a voice like winter itself. "You took my sister's mind. You tried to take her life, and you almost succeeded. But you failed. She's alive. She's free. And you're finished." The marshals moved in, secured Crane, read him his rights in voices that carried across the platform. And as they led him away in chains, Lottie stood beside Cole and Eliza and watched the monster who had terrorized so many finally face justice. It wasn't over, not completely. There would be trials, testimony, long days of legal proceedings. But the network was broken. The women in that train car were being freed even now, marshals helping them down, wrapping them in blankets, promising them safety. Hollis had surrendered peacefully, offering to testify in exchange for protection for his family. He would go to prison. But his cooperation would help ensure Crane never escaped the consequences of his crimes. As dawn began to lighten the eastern sky, Lottie found herself sitting on a bench outside the depot, exhausted beyond measure. Cole settled beside her without asking permission. They sat in silence for a long moment, watching the sunrise paint the mountains gold. "Thank you," he said finally, "for not giving up, for believing Eliza could be saved when I had almost stopped believing it myself. She saved herself in the end. All I did was remind her who she was. You did more than that." Cole's hand found hers, rough and calloused and warm. "You gave me hope when I had nothing left but anger. Showed me that justice was still possible even when everything seemed designed to protect the guilty." Lottie thought about Mary Aldrich, about the case that had started all of this, about a young woman who had walked into a lake because she couldn't live with the shame of being victimized. "We didn't save everyone," she said quietly. "People still died, still suffered. I failed them." "No, Crane failed them. Hollis failed them. A system that protected monsters over victims failed them." Cole squeezed her hand. "But you fought for them. Even knowing you couldn't save them, all you fought. That matters." 3 months later, on a morning when winter had finally released its grip on Montana and the first hints of spring were touching the mountains, Charlotte Hayes stood in a Helena courtroom and watched Victor Crane sentenced to 25 years in the territorial prison. Grant Hollis received 10 years, lighter than he deserved perhaps, but his testimony had helped convict Crane and expose the dozens of corrupt officials who had enabled the network. Justice was imperfect, but it was justice nonetheless. 23 women had been rescued from Crane's operation that night at the depot. Some had returned to their families. Others had chosen to build new lives in Montana, far from the places that held painful memories. Eliza Mercer had done something else entirely. She had written a book. The Women They Tried to Erase became an instant sensation, selling thousands of copies and exposing the reality of criminal networks that preyed on vulnerable women. She had become exactly what Crane had feared, a voice that couldn't be silenced. And Lottie had made a choice of her own. She stood on the porch of the Bar M ranch house, watching the sun set over land that had become home in ways she never expected. Cole found her there, as he often did these days, bringing coffee and the comfortable silence of two people who had been through hell together and emerged stronger for it. "Second thoughts," he asked, "about what turning down the Pinkerton job offer, deciding to build a life in the middle of nowhere instead of returning to civilization, any of it, all of it?" Lottie considered the question seriously. The head of the Pinkerton agency had personally asked her to return, had offered her a promotion, a substantial raise, recognition for bringing down one of the largest criminal networks in the Western Territories. She had declined. "No second thoughts," she said. "This is where I'm meant to be, even though it means dealing with Joshua's grumbling and cattle that smell terrible and winters that last half the year, even though—" She looked at him, this man who had ridden into her investigation and become her partner in every sense of the word. "Do you have second thoughts about me staying every day?" His expression was serious. "I think about how you gave up your career, your reputation, everything you worked for, and I wonder if I'm worth that sacrifice." "You're not." Cole's face fell. "Oh, but this is." Lottie gestured to the ranch spread below them, to the women working in the gardens and the bunkhouses they had converted into safe housing, to the future they were building. "We're creating something that matters here, a place where women who have nowhere else to go can find safety, purpose, a chance to rebuild. That's worth any sacrifice." They had started small, just a few women who needed temporary shelter. But word had spread. Now the Bar M was known throughout the territory as a place of refuge. Some women stayed only a few weeks before moving on. Others, like Sarah Blackwood, had become permanent fixtures, helping to run the operation and mentor newcomers. It was imperfect, chaotic, often overwhelming, and Lottie couldn't imagine doing anything else. "There's something I need to ask you," Cole said. His hand found hers, their fingers intertwining with the natural ease of long practice. "Something I've been thinking about for a while now. If it's about expanding the bunkhouse again, the answer is yes. We're already overcrowded. It's not about the bunkhouse." He turned to face her fully. "Charlotte Hayes, you came into my life when I was consumed by vengeance, when I had forgotten what it meant to hope for anything beyond revenge. You reminded me that there are things worth fighting for besides anger, worth living for beyond the past." Lottie's breath caught. "Cole, let me finish. You're the strongest, smartest, most stubborn woman I've ever known. You drive me insane with your refusal to follow orders and your tendency to walk into danger without backup, and I can't imagine spending another day without you." He pulled something from his pocket. A ring, simple gold with a small stone that caught the fading sunlight. "Marry me, not because you need me or I need you, but because we choose each other, because what we've built together is worth making permanent." Lottie looked at the ring, at Cole's face, at the ranch below where women were building new lives because she and Cole had decided to fight for something beyond themselves. She thought about the path that had brought her here, the failures and losses, the victories hard won and dearly bought. "Yes," she said, "yes to all of it. The ranch, the work, you, all of it." When he kissed her, it tasted like promise, like hope, like the beginning of something that might actually last. 1 year later, Charlotte Mercer stood in the same spot on that porch, one hand resting on the swell of her pregnant belly and watched her husband ride in from the north pasture. Eliza was with him, laughing at something he had said, her face bright with the joy of someone who had reclaimed her life. The ranch had grown. 40 women now called it home, either temporarily or permanently. They had added a schoolhouse where Lottie taught reading and mathematics, a workshop where women learned trades, a network of contacts throughout the territory who could offer employment to those ready to move on. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was real, it was meaningful, and it was theirs. As Cole dismounted and walked toward the porch, Lottie thought about the woman she had been 3 years ago. The detective so consumed by guilt over one failure that she had thrown away everything to chase redemption. That woman was gone, transformed by fire and struggle into someone stronger, someone who had learned that saving everyone was impossible, but fighting for anyone was always worth it. "You look thoughtful," Cole said, climbing the steps to join her. His hand settled on her stomach, feeling the baby move beneath his palm. "Just remembering where we started, how far we've come." "Any regrets?" Lottie looked at the life they had built, at the future growing inside her, at the man who had chosen her, not because she needed saving, but because they made each other better. "Not a single one," she said, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The last winter in Bitter Creek had been the coldest, the darkest, the most brutal, but it had also been the crucible that forged something beautiful from the wreckage of broken dreams. Sometimes the hardest journeys led to the most extraordinary destinations. Sometimes the worst nights gave way to the brightest mornings. And sometimes, if you were brave enough to keep fighting when everything seemed lost, you found something worth more than anything you thought you wanted. You found home. The end.